hello, we're starting. Thank you for coming to the Bring the Cloud to You session. This morning, you've all been to the keynote and heard about exciting Anthos announcement. So here, we have a panel of the product and engineering leaders responsible for creating Anthos to answer any questions you might have. First, we're going to introduce ourselves. So here's the rule for our panelists. Everybody's going to tell the audience your name, your role, and your favorite song that describes CSP, and bonus points if you're able to sing. So I can start. My name is Rae Wang. I lead a product team for identity config and policy management for CSP. My song is John Lennon's Imagine. Imagine all the workloads living life in peace. Okay, we can start from that side.
Great. So my name is Alberto Maestro. I'm a product manager at Google. And my song is Don't Stop Believing by Journey, given that we're all together in this journey.
Thank you. You didn't sing. You didn't sing.
We're going to lose a lot of customers.
It's a really hard song to sing.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Chen Goldberg. I'm the engineering director, leading many of the Anthos engineering teams. And my song is Think by Aretha Franklin. Like the freedom, huh? And the reason why I know I can sing it because I used the Google Home. I sang it to it, and then it told me what the song is.
Hey, my name is Jess, Leroy, Director of Product Management on the security side. Let's see, my song for this was Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I went super ultra cheesy because as the security guy, signed with certificates, sealed with GK Security, and delivered through Anthos. So, all right. Here I am, baby, signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours.
My name is Aparna. I lead the product team for Kubernetes, GKE, now what's part of Anthos, GKE on-prem, and GKE Migrate, or Anthos Migrate. My song for Anthos, I haven't done a lot of thinking, so just kind of mainstream, Endgame by Taylor Swift. I hope that Anthos is, for our customers, the end game.
And a singing?
Oh, gosh. We want to be your end game. End game. We want to be your A team.
Okay, well, I didn't keep it for now.
Okay.
Wait, you don't have to sing?
Imagine all the workloads living life in peace. Okay, we also, just to test whether you read slides or not, we're putting a little test. Who do you think is missing from stage? Jennifer's missing. You've seen her at the keynote today. She needs to go to a last-minute press event, so we're going to pretend to be her and answer questions for her here. Okay, so after the announcement this morning, I walked around Moscone Center. Can you believe how many people there are today? And I asked people what are some of the burning questions on their mind about Anthos, and I compiled some of them. So we're going to start from a few questions from that list, and then we'll open up to a live audience question. So the very first question, everybody wants to know, why did we change the name from Cloud Service Platform to Anthos? Aparna, what do you think?
Okay. So Anthos is Greek. Cloud Services Platform is not Greek. A lot of the components are named in Greek, like Kubernetes and Istio and Knative. So Anthos is a more apropos name. Also, Anthos means bloom. Bringing something to life. And we believe that Anthos is a game changer. It's something that is bringing a change in the industry that hasn't been there before, because it's removing the risk of being multi-cloud and giving users choice. So that's why the name Anthos for the platform, bringing life to multi-cloud.
Great, thank you. Okay, then now we know the name, then we wanted to talk about what is the vision of Anthos and why are enterprises excited about it. Alberto, you want to talk to that?
It's been a phenomenal journey over the last many years that we've been implementing the vision of cloud, and our customers have been experimenting with lots of technologies. We have gone through many iterations of application modernization, platform as a service. And when we launched Kubernetes, we struck a chord. We actually, the industry sent us signals that this is a model that worked for us. With Anthos, what we are bringing is that operational model. We are bringing it everywhere. We are actually complementing with a lot of other technologies, such as they have an end-to-end solutions that they can start using to modernize and transform their enterprises today. That flexibility is based on our open source investments, and that makes that platform open to run everywhere, and being able to enable an open ecosystem of partners that will help us deliver all of the technology that is needed for those enterprises to be successful.
Cool, thank you. Let's go to Hen next. Have we heard from any early customers on how Anthos improves their development and release velocity?
Yes. Actually, we had today in the spotlight session, we had 2 customers that have been using Anthos, HSBC and Loblaw. And it's important to say that ever since we have announced CSP 8 months ago, we were mostly focusing about working with our customers. And Anthos is a platform, a product that puts users first. Anthos gives customers choice. So they want to get the agility and velocity that the cloud promised them to have, but it also introduced new risks for them. For example, how do you manage those multiple environments? How do you verify and approve new services, meet the bar, and your developers can use it? How do you make sure that your talent is not spread too thin? So we heard today, for example, from HSBC, how they're excited that Anthos gives them that velocity, both on-prem, where they have workloads that they are not intending to move and they have regulation they want to meet, and on GCP. That was one example. Hisham from Loblaw said that Anthos helps him, of course, with agility, but he was focusing about how it helps him to build the best team. Because when we talk about digital transformation, it starts with the people. And by bringing Anthos into his organization, he can attract the best talent by letting them, developers, use the newest technologies out there. He gives developers the choice to use whatever services they want, and they can really use and focus on bringing value because they are using managed products. So those were just 2 examples of how customers were excited about Anthos.
Okay, great, thank you. Now they're excited about it. We know some of them also have started testing in their environment, some even in the production environment. Aparna, can you tell us what they've been doing with Anthos in their environments?
Sure. So in the case of HSBC, they're looking to have a centralized development environment where all of their different lines of business, so it's a big bank, it's a global bank, they've got like the retail banking, the commercial banking, the wealth management group, and they want to have a centralized development platform that's on-prem, that all these groups can basically develop on. And like many banks, actually Scotiabank is very similar, they want a separation of concerns between what the developers access, and that layer should be something that's really super simple, fast for them to get started and roll applications out, versus what the operators access. And what the operators access has to be something where there's centralized control and they can implement enterprise policies to make sure that all their compliance and regulatory requirements are met. When you think about the banks, they have, in the case of HSBC, they said 40,000 developers. So there's a variety of different skill levels. Some of them are with the bank, some of them are contractors. And so they want really a simplified interface for development, but a very tightly controlled environment for compliance and regulatory and security. And the reason they want GKE on-prem is so that they have a consistent environment, that when they move to the cloud, everything they've built is cloud ready, and they can just move it to the cloud. So that's one example. We had another example of Kohl's. Kohl's is a retailer. They have many, many stores, I think 1,800 or some stores, and they want an environment in each of those stores that's kind of a compact environment, but has the compute that's required, and they can do continuous integration, continuous delivery from a centralized cloud-based development platform, and then deliver to those retail locations. So those are 2 examples of Anthos in action.
Great, thank you. And Hans has something to add?
And I can add about Cardinal Health. That they've been trying out Anthos Migrate and moving from VMs to containers. So they've been migrating to cloud, and they were excited to actually get the observability capabilities into their environment. So by moving from VMs directly to Kubernetes, they already get a better service operator experience automatically.
Great, thank you. So when we think about these industries, whether it's banking or retail or healthcare, we know that security is top of mind for all of these admins. So Jess, why don't you tell us about how we think about security in the hybrid world?
Yeah. Okay. So over the course of 2019, as we look at this year, we've sort of got 4 main pillars of work that we're doing. And they tie into the way that Anthos looks at the world. So we think of security of the cloud, which are all of the different security controls that we build in, all the compliance and regulatory compliance that we do, all of the default encryption and strong authentication on connections. You don't have to do anything in order to get those things. Then security in the cloud, where we provide you with all of the configurations and options that you create your own security sort of settings and portfolios from. Those are your firewall settings, your VPC service controls for logical boundaries, IAM, and org policies. And then security services. So this year you'll see new things from us on the services side, where we are building services on top of those things. And then our 4th goal is around securing Anthos. So all of the work that we're doing needs to be portable to Anthos. So we are taking sort of the best of GKE security, Istio security, secure pipelines through GKE, secure connections, and Envoy and certificates through Istio, and leveraging all of that through Anthos. So we're securing the platform itself on-prem, and as you migrate, you get all the benefits of the other pieces in the cloud as well. So it's a really nice fit. Those security services that I was talking about, we'll announce a bunch of those tomorrow, and you'll see us start to push those down towards Anthos as well over the course of this year.
Yeah, that's a top benefit for Anthos. Even without moving your workloads off-prem, you can already start to benefit from a lot of these security values from Google. Okay, cool. Another big announcement from Anthos this morning was our marketplace. So Alberto, why don't you tell us what it means to customers, especially to enterprises?
I'm super excited about the marketplace. The reason being is because now that we have a platform that our customers can start investing and building their applications, they have the need to run their existing, the way they manage their existing solutions is it was as laborious as they were building their own platform. So we have the opportunity to actually help our partners come into the platform, meet their customers on the platform, and simplify the operational process, the procurement process, such as all our customers can find all their applications, all the services that they need at the click of a button, and have the whole life cycle of ensuring that those services are delivered in a consistent way. One of the things that our customers tell us is that, yeah, great, we love your platform, but when something goes wrong, who do I have to talk to? So a lot of investment is going on to make sure that there is a consistent way to deliver and run those services in Anthos, such as our customers have a consistent experience and they can actually spend more time just building their applications versus trying to figure out what throat to choke.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I will wait a little bit to come back to the Moscone questions. Let's come back to this room. We can open for live questions. Lucy has the mic.
Okay. Yeah. So last year at GCP Next, right, the CSP was announced, right, and as part of that, the GKE on-prem was part of that offering, and then managed Istio was one of them, right? And now we have Anthos. So has there been a change in strategy from last year, or is it just an extension of?
Yeah, so no change in strategy. We've taken the announcement from last year, we've taken it forward next step. GKE on-prem, what we announced as part of Anthos is now GA. And we saw tremendous demand when we announced it last year. I think we mentioned in our spotlight, we had over 1,000 customers sign up And so we took that customer feedback. We actually worked directly with those customers to bring the product through alpha, beta, and now announced GA here today. What we've done, though, in addition, is we've added several components into the overall platform that is Anthos. Last year, we also announced the config management capability, which is from a single source of truth. Across all your different environments and all your different clusters, you can deploy policies, RBAC policies, quota policies, a number of different policies. That also moved to GA. And last year was when we announced the introduction of the marketplace. And as Alberto stated, that has also moved to GA. So those three components very tightly moved to GA as part of Anthos. And of course, the managed Istio piece. The managed Istio piece, I think we previously announced that it's beta in GKE. And we're moving forward. And over the course of our roadmap this year, we'll be bringing that to the rest of Anthos.
So I had one more question about the Anthos Migrate, right? So that's a new thing, right? That was not something which was there last year, right? And I think you mentioned that there are some customers who are already leveraging it or using that, right? I'm just trying to understand, like, is it because we come from a legacy world, right? And we are migrating applications to the cloud. And how easy in that case would Anthos Migrate be, right? Because we are dealing with monolith application with different databases, and then we use managed services or managed databases in the cloud, right? So in that case, would Anthos Migrate be applicable, or is it something
Yes.
where you already build cloud native applications and only then you can use it?
No, actually, Anthos Migrate. And so it's one of two new capabilities as part of Anthos this year. So we talked about what moved to GA, which is the 3 or 4 capabilities we talked about last year. And the 2 new capabilities that we introduced this year, one is Anthos Migrate, which takes your monoliths, existing monoliths, including your databases, some things like Sybase, your WebSphere. We showed, a CRM application, Sugar CRM. So very much, existing what you might call packaged applications, where you might not even have the source code. That's what Anthos Migrate targets. And it moves that as a system container into GKE. And we announced that capability, it's brand new. It's something that I think is kind of a first in the industry, particularly given the speed and the simplicity of the migration. So we showed a demo in our spotlight where it was less than 5 minutes. Of course, we were biting our nails and, but we did the migration right there on the stage. Clicked it off and then completed it right there on the stage in 5 minutes into a system container, bringing you the benefits of the bin packing, the benefits of the isolation from the OS patching and freedom from the VM. And of course, bringing you into a tool chain where you have Istio enabled, managed Istio enabled in that GKE environment, so you can view that CRM system now, still a monolith, as a service, in Stackdriver and so forth. And set security policies. So it brings it into the Anthos framework. That's why it's called Anthos Migrate. And yet we do that with 0 code changes, so not breaking the monolith. But I do want to say that's the first step. That's just the first step. You may want to break the monolith ultimately. Certainly the customers that I have that are on Sybase, they don't intend to be on Sybase forever. They're thinking of breaking it. But this is a good first step. How easy is it to do? It's not that difficult. It's actually surprisingly easy. It's based on and built on using the same technology that we use for VM to VM migration, which we acquired through a company called Velostrada, and so it's actually fairly enterprise ready. But there is setup involved. You have to set up the agent in your vSphere environment. But it's actually quite rich, and we've got a handful of customers that are doing this already. We mentioned Cardinal Health. We actually mentioned a couple others on stage. And it's pretty versatile. This is just the beginning of our roadmap. So you can migrate from VMware on-prem. You can also migrate from VMs in AWS. And in future, the destination, right now it's just GKE in the cloud, but in the future it'll also be GKE on-prem. So that's and we'll continue adding applications to it.
I would just like to add, just to complete the picture, you asked whether this is a change of strategy, and we talked about what was added this year around Anthos. So we mentioned the Anthos Migrate. We also talked about the multi-cloud, this time for the first time. So already last year, we talked about connecting all your Kubernetes environment, your GKE environment from a single control plane, from a single pane of glass. And this year, we are talking about connecting any Kubernetes cluster into that environment and actually applying similar policies and tools and experience on that. And the third thing, actually, I will add 2 more things. We also did the cloud run. So we demoed that today, right? So everything we do here is about engineering velocity. They don't really care about Kubernetes. So we are helping customers with Cloud Run move from a container image to a running application, internet-facing running application in seconds. Okay, it's that easy. And we also showed that, so that will be the other thing that we have added. And the last thing, which I'm very happy, which also parts of the marketplace and so on, is really the ecosystem that is built on top of Anthos, right? So TK today in his keynote spent much of his time talking about the partnerships. If it's hardware, software, you know, you saw their system integrators and ISV really having that support and community in delivering Anthos. So that will be the complete new things in Anthos, but this is really the next step as we see it in the journey in modernization.
Hi there, Corne from Jumo. So you guys touched on a couple of things, breaking up the monolith, multi-cloud. I had a question, I was talking to Lucy about this earlier. The Anthos thing looks very cool, but it seems to assume that your application runs completely and entirely inside Kubernetes. What if you try to make use of the cloud native services like PubSub or even Amazon queuing services? So do you guys have any plans for Anthos to support things outside of Kubernetes? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So one of the things that are coming throughout the year, we have a very rich roadmap of capabilities that are becoming part of Anthos throughout the year. And we have talked in many sessions around our Istio technology and service mesh. And one of our goals is making sure that whatever your workload is running, we give you the capabilities to manage how any workload, whatever they are and how it is implemented, how we can actually help you manage the data plane between a VM and a container, a VM and a VM, a VM and a service, a container, well, all the permutations. Effectively gives you the same policy system that we are implementing today to manage effectively containerized workloads. We will give you the same capabilities to manage the data plane and therefore connecting and modernizing the way all applications that you are running, whatever they are running and however they have been implemented, will give you those capabilities. So that's one of the investments that we are doing, and we will ship it throughout the year. Is anything else that you guys want to add? Great. So there's many levels of how we are enabling managed services. One of the principles that we are applying to Anthos is that when we think about the services that we bring into Anthos, is that we're going to treat first-party and third-party services the same. We want to give you exactly the same consistency that we are bringing into the platform with first-party services. We want to bring the same consistency to third-party services. And we will, our goal is to make sure that whatever services that we bring into Anthos work everywhere where you want Anthos to run. That is one of our goals. And the journey just started. One of the things that we announced, we are announcing throughout Next is the Kubernetes marketplace and all the partners that we have in the Kubernetes marketplace, but also some things that are truly innovative. For example, Palo Alto Networks have actually shipped as part of the Kubernetes marketplace the capability of integrating their threat detection appliance with one click of a button. So you have a Kubernetes environment, you deploy this adapter, and that connects your threat detection appliance to your Anthos service mesh. Such as you get all of that capability without having to change any code. And we'll see that there is a lot of services that we are going to bring into Anthos that are going to give you all the capabilities that you need to be able not just to modernize your application, but also integrate with existing applications.
Maybe a related question to that as well. So I work in the BI space, and in the BI space, you have everything from data storage, ETL, data warehouse, semantic models, and then you have your visualizations. I don't see how Anthos can help migrate that. If it can, it'll be great. Because one of the things is that Google is not available in China. So if we are able to migrate a workload that is in Google to another cloud that is available in China as is, that would be great. But I'm still having a hard time understanding how Anthos will help in this particular situation.
Yeah, so Anthos is not a platform that needs to be in Google Cloud. So for example, when we talk to HSBC, they are running in regions where Google Cloud is not available.
Application, because the word application to me, well, the way it's being used is user front-end applications. I can see that. But when you have an ecosystem of components that forms a data warehouse application, how is that planned to be migrated?
So it's not necessarily meant to be migrated. It sort of depends on whether the customer wishes to migrate their data warehouse, including all parts of the data warehouse. So I'm not sure if I'm necessarily answering your question, but the example that I would give of a regulated company, which is HSBC, is that they're running in environments where there's no cloud available. For example, they're in Saudi Arabia and they're in certain. China is similar. And they have data that they need to keep on-prem. For regulatory reasons, they're not moving that to the cloud. And so the benefit of actually the on-prem component of Anthos, which is GKE on-prem, the reason that they're using it is because it gives them a consistent environment. It's not in the cloud, but it's an environment that's why we say bringing the cloud to you, because we're bringing the cloud to your on-prem environment, and you run it the same way that you would run it in the cloud. Your data warehouse may or may not be running in Kubernetes. Your data warehouse may be running outside, right? It's running outside. But it can still use the capabilities of service management and of policy management, as long as you can expose your application, your various parts of your data warehouse application as services. And so Dinesh Keswani talked about this in the spotlight. He said that he wants everything in his environment to be a service. He wants the data that is on-prem to be front-ended by a service that can be accessed through a set of APIs. And that is something that he wants to manage as a standard in his on-prem as well as in the cloud. So that's the way, at least in the Anthos philosophy, that we would manage an on-prem piece.
I think I understood a nuance of the question, which I hinted at before, is that before Anthos, it was just to be called Cloud Services Platform. And the actual name means that we want it is a platform for services, and we are working with our customers, and we are listening to you, and we are going to bring whatever services that we need to bring to Anthos, whether it's first party or third party, to make sure that it addresses your needs. Today, we are setting up just the foundation of that platform. But we are working very closely with our customers to understand not just that you need the capabilities to run your applications on the platform, but what services do you need to be available on the platform. I'm excited because our third-party partners can actually get there very fast. We're working with them to bring a lot of those services there. And, but if there is, of course, we are working with our customers and figure out, is there first-party services that you want to see on that platform? And having that conversation to make sure that at some point, you have all that you need.
Yes. And probably something that you've also have been thinking about, you don't want to containerize or migrate everything like that. You can actually move to a managed product, right? So we have our own data warehouse services. We've just acquired Aluma, which also helps migrating.
It's not available in China.
Okay. So I'm just saying that that's the things that, right, on top of that, we're also moving services to the cloud.
So I'm actually working with a number of customers who need to run potentially on other public clouds in environments where Google doesn't have a data center. And then when we talk to them about how do you make your workloads portable between multiple clouds, right? Like the only obvious solution is going with, whether it's in compute or even storage and other places, going with open source standards, right? So using open source standards for workloads and then using a managed control plane. And as Alberto said, we're starting, I think, from compute, workloads, and API management, policy management, but we kind of definitely understand that it takes a much larger stack for interapplication. And some of these early customers are starting to use kind of the well-known kind of open source storage and database products, and we're looking at more and more to make that managed experience easier for you to run multiple clouds.
Okay, that might have answered my question, but my company does some manufacturing in China, and we'd like to have a point of presence there, but so far, because we run everything on Google Cloud, we haven't been able to. And I guess, are there any partners that have managed to use Anthos to sort of form to create like that point of presence in, say, like on the factory floor for this kind of purpose? And how easy is it?
So specifically for China, why don't we connect offline? We're not yet ready to announce, but we are looking at some of these kind of special region use cases. Let's talk offline.
Hi. Quick question. So it's actually more suggested than anything, but maybe you want to hear. So you're really, really helpful for moving VM to Kubernetes. That's great. But I already bought OpenShift. I'm running this environment there. Can you help me migrate it? Same thing that I will ask on any other Kubernetes that I'm open source using. I think that would be huge, huge buy for you guys specifically, considering the market.
Yeah, it makes sense. The Kubernetes is the foundation for a lot of these platforms, and we're working with our partners to figure out what is the things that our customers need to be successful. So, of course, that's our focus, making customers successful.
Yes, and I would say that the key thing here is talking about the experience, right? Because we do have the portability of workload between those environments, so that actually already exists. And what usually users will appreciate that experience and the ecosystem. So that depends really on what the customer needs.
But in OpenShift, there is more than just a regular vanilla Kubernetes, right? I mean, it will be very helpful if you will be able to do all this, the configuration that I already configure in this environment and help me to move it to there.
Yeah, so definitely. Actually, I would say that the challenge of migrating from a VM to GKE is a bigger challenge than moving from OpenShift to Anthos or GKE. It's actually much easier because it is, you already have a set of YAML, and there's only a couple of objects in OpenShift that are different. There's a different CLI. You can essentially do the migration without any sort of tooling. This is not that complicated. Hen mentioned our multi-cluster capability, our multi-cluster, multi-cloud registration capability. So currently, that is for a number of different conformant distributions of Kubernetes. I think we will work to bring OpenShift into that. So you can have an OpenShift cluster and a GKE on-prem cluster and a COPS cluster in AWS or wherever it is that you want, and view all of your workloads and all of your resources from a single place, and also to deploy workloads across those clusters. So in that sense, we'd like users to be able to manage their Kubernetes environments the same. If there's a migration from OpenShift to GKE, I don't think that's that complicated. But perhaps your question was about the experience, the developer experience, because there is a PaaS essentially, right, that's built on top of Kubernetes in the case of OpenShift. And Anthos is a lot more modular in that sense. So there is the cluster management, multi-cluster management layer. There is also an additional what we call module, which has the developer experience. And that developer experience is essentially Cloud Run. I don't know if you've tried it. It's extremely simple. And it is based underneath on Knative. It's a hosted offering of Knative. And so it has automated serving capabilities that, I mean, for a developer, you can essentially go from your source code or a container in a registry, and within less than a minute, so in seconds, you have an externally exposed endpoint that is your application. And it is automatically scaled. You don't have to know what a deployment is. You don't have to know what a service is. You don't have to set up any kind of ingress. You don't even have to know about the cluster, right? That can all be done for you by some central admin. So with Cloud Run, and that's really, I think, it's a PaaS, essentially. With Cloud Run, you get all of that set up, and as you get more traffic, the system automatically scales the pods, scales the cluster, both up and down. So all of that is what is the Anthos developer experience.
So my question is probably a little bit confusing, and that's where the ethos of the question is. Let me try to weave a story, and I'll try to bring it together in the question. So we in middle management have to work with the engineering teams, the developers, and you answered a part of my question over there with Cloud Run, right? That how it can be write once and use many times, or write one and run many times, right? But then when we have to make a case to senior management or the finance team when they're actually signing the bill, what's the value prop with all these services? What's the value prop with Anthos? Why should we go from just a compute engine where we are not running our workloads in the cloud? We did convince them about Kubernetes. We did convince them about a managed offering. But then what's the value prop with all these services, and with what is it going to cost us versus having our own developers spend some time building and managing things on top of compute? Because I'll borrow from what my friend said, we are still a legacy company. Cloud development has a lot of velocity, right? I mean, even before we can keep up with it, new abilities come up, new facilities come up, there are new marketplaces which come up. So my point is, while a part of it was already answered with Cloud Run, what's the value prop in these services that we can imbibe them in our workflow, or we can think about moving to them in the future? So does that help? I'm sorry, if it's confusing, but that's, as I said, it's the ethos of where we are in middle management.
Okay, I think several of us will probably want to answer this question. Let me just give a brief answer. From the CIO's perspective, the top line about Anthos is that it minimizes or removes the risk of lock-in, and it maximizes your choice. It gives you the choice to deploy anywhere. And that's great when you bring it down, the piece that you don't have. So you mentioned you've got this running, the environment running already. The piece that you don't have, there's several pieces, but one of the pieces is you don't have a multi-cluster management capability. That's something that's unique in Anthos. And it spans multiple clouds for workload management. You don't really have the centralized policy and security control, and that's extremely important for enterprises, right? And then, of course, that separation of concerns between developers, giving them an easy workflow where they don't have to know the details, and then giving the operators all of the power to control things at scale in a standard way. So I think that's what I would say to the CIO. Of course, it comes down to what is the TCO of doing it this way versus doing it sort of ad hoc, one by one, in every environment, managing security policies separately, and having that fragmented estate. And that has people cost. It has platform cost. It adds risk. Yeah, so I mean, we have several such customers, and they're not necessarily using all parts of the platform, but one that is, and I don't know that I can name them, but it's a retailer, and they're using GKE in the cloud, and like I said, they have almost 1,000 stores, and they want to be able to run the same platform, and they've tried many different things. They've tried a lot of the existing technologies, but the multi-cluster management capability, the ability to distribute workloads from a single source, and to be able to manage policy from a single source, that's very attractive, and that's what they're like, I like GK in the cloud, it's fully managed, I want that capability in my stores, and if you give me workload management on top, That's awesome.
Yeah. And we are actually working on a set of white papers on TCO with examples, so to quantify these values, so it's easier to tell your CIO.
And specifically talking about, I think I know which customer. So they had to do it themselves, right? So they've wasted their talent on a problem that we can solve for them. Right? So that's actually clear. They say, okay, we're going to get that to be more secured, and we can innovate more.
Yeah,
The TCO, as a preview, what is in there, you think about it, you have to run, deploy, and manage your own Kubernetes cluster as a starting. Then you have to start adding envoy proxies or orchestration, making sure that all the upgrades go smooth. If you start adding all of the employee cost, time offline that you need, most customers take their cluster offline to upgrade them. So all of that is start adding up, and you will see that the value proposition that we bring with Anthos is very compelling. That's in the short term. That just immediately you can calculate it. There is an intangible benefit that we're trying to drive with Anthos, which is also the standardization. If you think about it, everybody's running Kubernetes in a different way, which means that it makes it impossible for a service provider to deliver services on your platform because they don't know how you run it. They don't know which components you're using, which versions, or how they've been configured. So an intangible value of Anthos, it is a platform that is common. That means that it's going to unlock the opportunity to have service providers deliver the services they need, as we were discussing before, whether first party or third party. So there is the short-term total cost of ownership, but also strategically, you want to invest on a platform that is going to have an ecosystem around it.
One more small thing, and we'll move on here. As part of that process that you're talking about, one of those components that I see a lot are security and compliance. And I'm thinking of a meeting that Aparna and I were in about a week ago, where a large financial services firm looking at that type of TCO, there's the above the line TCO where you're gonna save money, you're gonna make money, et cetera. But there's the below the line where you're gonna save time and all of that energy and effort. And you've got to go through, for every application that you want to migrate, you've got to go through and you have to justify the migration, plan out the migration, you've got to assess all of the security, and then you have to assess the compliance underneath that too, to make sure that you're not going to completely blow up your compliance state when you migrate. So if we can standardize all of that on Anthos, then we can really streamline a big chunk of that process for the customer.
Yeah, so regarding Anthos migration, any plans for bare metal migration? Yeah, as part of moving the data center to the cloud?
You mean migration to bare metal or by migration from bare metal?
From.
Right now, we're very focused on migrating existing applications from virtual machines to GKE, obviously to GCE, and to GKE on-prem. And so that's kind of the roadmap for now.
Because the way I'm seeing it, we have a lot of customers, legacy customers, who are using, all the legacy data centers, which has application developed on real bare metal servers, right? Each server which has its own application and stuff like that. A lot of customers are not using virtual machines and stuff like that. And I believe that it would be helpful for them if you would be able to provide them with an agent that would be able to migrate them into Anthos. That would be, as far as I see it, a valid use case to move to Kubernetes and stuff like that easily. So that's it. Thank you.
It's good feedback. Thank you.
So I think I want to take this a little bit different. Part of this vision for Anthos and the service mesh and bringing in the marketplace, really seems like relies on identity and access management. And I really want to hear more about what Google is doing to, plug in our existing identity and access management environments and systems, into the service mesh, because I don't want to have to reinvent it for Anthos because we already have it, right? We're also a G Suite school, so we also have it in Google already.
So there's identity and access management. Let's kind of talk about both of them, right? In terms of identity, some of the most important changes coming from service mesh is, in the past, we all use service accounts, right? And then you copy a key, put it in GitHub, and all hell breaks loose. And then really service identity is, as we see, the future of the identity for services. Right, so we are more and more kind of looking at best practice based on service identities, and more going to try to hide service account as an implementation detail. Really think about it as a strong identity of services, and try to make you do as little of the copying keys as possible. Eventually, you should forget about keys. A strong way to authenticate your services, and that's a much safer way to express your policies. And then in terms of kind of user identity, right, we kind of Anthos allows us to think about not only in the past, it's your employee's identity, you use cloud identity, you do a federation, so on, but also with GKE on-prem, now we're building connections, integrations with your existing on-prem IDPs, such as Active Directory. But we're also now thinking about you serving your customers. So the new identity platform, we're launching, it's about how do you kind of provide an identity service for your applications customers, kind of extending it beyond just your developers, but to your customers as well. And then in terms of access management, there are, GCP has its own kind of, IAM policies, native policy for the infrastructures, and then with Kubernetes Istio, they also come with the Kubernetes style API and RBAC and the Kubernetes style of policies. Right now, I think with CSP config management, we help you distribute those consistently across all your clusters and meshes. We are kind of looking to what would it take for. This is a common problem, right? So today we have it between the new Kubernetes system and GCP IAM, but you also have that with SQL, you also have that with Linux. One example we've done in the past is we've created a bridge between your GCP IAM system and the Linux permission system, right? So you have this user logging feature. We're looking at additional opportunities where you have pain points managing across multiple of these AM systems. We are looking at how to build those bridges for you.
Anthos is really optimized for hybrid and multi-cloud, and so the configuration and policy management in Anthos is very much based on Kubernetes RBAC and quota management and Istio configuration, and managing that from a centralized source of truth. I think the question perhaps is, can that centralized source of truth be IAM, GCP IAM, for example?
Can that source of truth be the IAM system that we already have?
Yeah.
Right? And potentially extending it into GCP IAM, great, but I really don't want three different systems.
So certainly, I mean, as Rae mentioned, we are doing identity federation with Active Directory through Google Cloud. So that, yes.
And we're looking for ways to, through Kubernetes Istio, we learned the only way to really have consistency across multi-cloud is to have it, attached to an open standard, right? So we're looking at what are the abstract concepts that are not provider specific that we can leverage. For example, namespace is a great concept, right? Service identity is another. So we're looking at how to evolve kind of both, GCP IAM as well as RBAC policies with the community kind of towards an abstraction layer that can live, on top of multiple different platforms.
How will it be licensed? How am I going to buy this?
Great question. You want to speak to that?
Right, yeah. So the licensing is, it's a subscription license that is based on a per vCPU managed by the platform as calculated by Kubernetes metering. So that's the model, and it's in blocks of 100 vCPUs. So we expect users will want to purchase several blocks of 100 vCPUs, build monthly, but signing up for a subscription for, say, a year.
Thank you. We're almost at time, and I wonder if each of the panelists would say, oh, you have a question. Okay. Maybe last question.
Since this is an AMA, I have to ask, one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses, which would you rather fight?
One horse-sized duck.
It's definitely, it's got to be the duck-sized horses, because the horse-sized duck is just way too dangerous. One big individual horse-sized duck.
And we're microservices,
Yeah, we're microservices. We don't like the one monolithic thing.
We'll migrate it for you if you need, but.
So my final question for the panelists is, if there's one talk that didn't already happen, is there something that you would like to share and ask people to check it out for the rest of the next conference?
So I think on Thursday, I don't remember the exact time, but on Thursday, sometime in the afternoon, there's a talk on connecting many clusters to Anthos. I would recommend that talk. The presenters are Matt DeLeo, and I think Ian Chakras, but Matthew DeLeo, if you look that up.
Hey, I'm talking tomorrow if you guys are free. Security spotlight.
I don't remember when is the time, but I think what we hear many people talk about in the context of Anthos is governance. So there is a session with John on Anthos config management. Do you remember when it is? Yeah. I can check that, but definitely just look for an Anthos config management session. I would recommend that.
There's a couple of sessions around the service mesh. I'm very excited about the things that we are showing to help modernize the data plane. And so there's sessions from Dan Cirulli and David Monroe. They are both extremely interesting, so I recommend those.
And Rae, do you have a talk?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact time. We have a session, kind of security best practice for hybrid. That's a joint session between an engineer from Rae Culling from Anthos Config Management and Goldberg, who's a product manager from networking. So these two, config and networking together solves your biggest security problems.
Yeah, network policies and overall.
Yep.
Excellent. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, panelists, for giving this talk. Thank you.
Thank you.